Game Changer by Hedgehog. Can you please just say yes? Jackson asked. Yejin was curious as to why he wouldn't leave her alone. She was more curious as to why he walked up to her in the first place. The girl liked to be by herself and tried her best to avoid talking to people at school. She was known by the kids in her class as the odd mute girl, so why the boy who played sports and cheered the loudest at games he wasn't participating in wanted to go on a date was beyond her. It was probably just a joke. Funny or not, Yejin was not having it. No. Will you please go away? She asked, not raising her eyes from her notebook she spent the past half-hour doodling in. He didn't move away from her desk, but she paid no attention to him. She wasn't drawing anything in particular, just letting her right hand hold her pen as it sprawled random shapes in the margins of her messy notes. The notebook was lifted off of her desk, and she finally looked up. Jackson held it up in the air above her grasp, taunting her as if they were in primary school. Why not? I can buy you ice cream and that can be it. Am I really that awful that you don't want to spend time with me? He asked, dramatic with the way he pronounced awful, as if it physically hurt him to say it. Yejin looked at him, this being the first time she's ever been so close. He was pretty attractive, with short black hair he often held back with a snapback, and full pink lips that any girl would love to feel on their own. But she knew he wasn't above playing mean tricks. This hadn't been the first time a cute boy has asked her out as a joke. She wouldn't fall for it. The girl looked Jackson dead in the eye and did her best to wipe any emotion off her face. Yes, you are that awful. Put down my notebook and leave me alone, she said, not letting herself look away from his gaze that was growing colder. Yejin forgot that she was sitting in her classroom, but when she heard people whisper after she spoke, the girl remembered her reputation and how others thought of her. I can't believe he got her to talk, one girl a few rows ahead of them, who had turned around in her seat, said. I've been in the same class as her for 3 years and never heard her voice, a boy a couple seats to the right said. She's feisty. I like it, another guy said from across the room. Whispers carried on as Jackson and Yejin held their ground in a staring contest. The group of boys Jackson always stuck around with were in some seats by the doorway, laughing their heads off. Out of Jackson's group that consisted of 6 other boys, only 2 were in Yejin's class. Those 2 were Mr. Wang himself and his stupid dinosaur-looking friend, Jebum. That's part of the reason that tipped Yejin off so fast. Why else would his entire group have come all the way from their own classes into her room? To watch Jackson, of course. Fine, Jackson said as he lowered the book down, about to lay it back onto the desk. This is when Yejin broke the eye contact and let out a breath she had been holding in. She looked at her desk to not find her notes, but instead heard footsteps moving further away. The girl looked up and saw Jackson walk over to the trash and drop the spiral-bound pages into the bin. No one said anything at this, but turned towards the front of the room as their history teacher walked in. Yejin sat still in her seat before reaching over to her bag and pulled out a few clean sheets of paper. The teacher greeted the class, and the girl carried on as if nothing happened, making sure to keep focus on the lesson, and not at the boy who spent the class giving her death stares. After history, there was math, and finally, school let out. Yejin never joined any clubs or sports, or had any reason to stay behind. Even if she was assigned to clean the classroom, she always skipped and went straight home. Today was no exception. The girl packed up her bag while everyone else buzzed about their plans and clubs, and whatever else they said that she often ignored. She stood up from her seat, pretending not to hear anything, as she walked towards the door. Jackson, looks like your girlfriend is leaving without you, Jebum said with a laugh from under his massive black-framed glasses that held no lenses, and matching colored hair that hung down straight into his eyes. Yejin pulled the strap of her bag up as she went to the doorway and was blocked by an arm. As others tried to leave the room, the person let them through, but made sure Yejin was stuck inside. The girl needed to get home so she could babysit her siblings while her parents worked. If she didn't catch the early bus, then she wouldn't be home until the older ones were let out of primary. None of them had house keys, so they would be locked outside in the cool October weather until Yejin arrived. If they told her parents that she was late, then she would be grounded and forced to stay inside even though she was never allowed to go anywhere anyways. It was a lose-lose situation. The girl pondered this in her head until a voice spoke up. "Are you doing anything later?" Jackson said as he held his arm across the doorway, maintaining the barrier. "Yes," Yedzin said. Watching her younger brothers and sisters as she tried to do homework was an everyday routine that she did not intend to break. The girl tried to crouch under the arm and walk through. This resulted in Jackson lowering the limb until it wrapped around the girl's shoulders, and he turned her to face him, pulling her closer so she wouldn't be blocking anyone else trying to leave. "Now you're doing something else. With me," Jackson said with a forced smile, making obvious he was already tired of her attitude. Yejin looked away from him and at the wall, waiting for him to get bored and leave. After the last group of students exited the room, leaving just her and the two boys, she grew impatient. Jackson dropped his hand from her shoulder, leaving her free to move as she pleased. Without a word, the girl turned around and left the room, feeling even more nervous of what was waiting for her at home. She walked through the halls that still held enough bodies to make it crowded, turning down a hallway to go to the furthest stairwell, the one no one used because it was so out of the way. She sprinted down the steps as fast as her feet could manage without slipping. Yejin kept up a quick pace that was just under the radar of running as she went out of the building and towards the bus stop. She sat on the bench and pulled out her phone, checking the time through the cracked screen. It told her she just missed the bus. The girl leaned into the seat and held in a scream. The next one wouldn't show up for 15 minutes. By then, Hoon and Juan will have been waiting for 10 minutes, and baby Nari will have been waking up from her nap. The boys never kept their mouths shut, so a lecture from both her mother and father would be due within the first 5 seconds of them coming home. "Sitting on a bench by herself? That's really so much more important than me?" A familiar voice was heard. Yejin closed her eyes and hoped it was a figment of stress, and that the next however many minutes it would take for the bus to show up would go by fast. "I don't think she's into you, man," another voice spoke. "Yep, the day's over and she said no. Looks like you have to pay up," someone else said. It was a bet after all. Yejin never had a doubt that Jackson messing with her was just a joke, but hearing it be confirmed still made a crushing impact on her self-esteem. She could hear the boy dig around in his pocket and pull something out. Afterwards, a chorus of thank yous and playful words sounded through the autumn air. The girl remembered she brought headphones today, so she raised her head and grabbed her backpack. Once she had the cord in hand, goodbyes were being said, and she did her best not to look in their direction. Yejin plugged in the headphones to her phone and pulled up the music app, sensing someone sit down next to her. She put in both earbuds and clicked play, before one of the headphones was pulled out of her ear. She looked to her right, and saw none other than Wang Jackson sitting beside her, putting her earbud into his own ear. She looked at him while he gazed onto the empty street. Finally, he looked at her. "I have to ride the bus too." "What song is this?" "I like it," he said. She couldn't believe how careless he was. Resisting to take back her other headphone, she sat and stared at the road until 3 songs later, the bus pulled up. Jackson pulled out the earbud and waited for her to get up first. Yejin made sure to get a seat that already had one person in it, just in case. She put both headphones in and watched the back of Jackson's head from a spot 2 rows in front of her. Halfway through the bus ride, he stood up and got off in the middle of the city. The girl kept her eyes away from the window as he walked down the street to wherever he had to go. After the ride was over, Yejin jogged down the road to her house. Outside were 2 little boys sitting on the front step. The girl walked up the driveway and heard their little voices yell out. "I'm telling on you when Mom gets home," Hoon, the younger boy, said. Yejin rolled her eyes as she pulled out the house key and went to unlock the door. "I could have not come back, and you would have had to wait for Autumn to come home." "I can still leave if you want," the girl said, gesturing down the road with her key in hand, not having yet opened the door. "Autumn never comes home until it's dinner time. We would have died waiting for her," Juan said. Autumn was the eldest, 1 grade older than Yejin, and also in her final year of high school. Autumn was the golden child to their parents. It could never do any wrong since she made perfect grades, allowing her to have the social life Yejin was banned from so she could watch her younger brothers. Autumn was pretty and tall and smart, and almost never acknowledged that she even knew Yejin whenever they were in public. Yejin did her best not to hate her older sister, but the younger brothers caught on quickly that the rest of them were treated unfairly in comparison. "You live over here too?" A voice was heard calling out from the sidewalk. Having heard it too many times today, Yejin cringed and hoped he had the wrong person. "Youngjae lives down this road. I guess I'll be seeing you more often," the voice said from the same spot. Yejin couldn't hold back any longer and let herself peek over her shoulder. There he was, Wang Jackson, waving from the pavement at her and her little brothers. "I thought only Arun was allowed to have boyfriends," one said as he turned around and looked at the door. At his age of 10, he was starting to become more aware of social situations and people's emotions. He was ready to get inside and be away from this random guy. "I won't tell Mom, just because he seems nice," Hoon said, his innocent 6-year-old mind only caring about the prospect of having a new playmate. "He's not my friend, so don't worry," Yejin said, as she fit the key in the lock and opened the door, ushering her little brothers inside.